What's up, everyone? So my name is Cecilio, and this is actually my first video. So I figured I'd do a video because, or kind of like provide insight into my journey of starting a Doctor of Public Health program. Today is actually my first day of classes. Um, I was I'll be completing my doctorate through California Baptist University. They're based in Riverside, California, and it's a 3-year program when completed full time, and it has a concentration in health education and promotion, which is one of the reasons I selected this program. So, I think one of the important things to be mindful of when thinking about um, if you are going to complete a doctorate of public health and also where that will be is to one definitely to reflect on why it is that you're completing the degree or you're wanting to. That could be professional. You feel like it may provide or open a door for other opportunities as far as career advancement. Um, you feel it may enhance your own professional skills and make you more effective in your role. Or it could be something as simple as just like personally, you want to achieve a new goal of attaining what is considered or could be considered the highest level of education that you can attain as it relates to the field of public health. And again, it doesn't always necessarily have to be tied to money or your job. It can also be personal fulfillment. And I think for me, that is kind of like it's a mesh of the two. My primary purpose is actually personal. It's something that I feel like I want to continue to advance. I never thought that I would ever be in a position to where I would have the opportunity to pursue a doctorate. And ultimately, I already do have my master's in public health, which in itself was a small feat for me as well, because again, it wasn't something, or it seemed far-fetched, but ultimately it was something that I was able to be successful at and achieve. And sometimes I do think that when you have that motivation and you have that drive, sometimes once you achieve or reach one goal, I think sometimes it's good to take a break. But I also think sometimes it's also beneficial to ensure that you continue or keep that momentum going. And so that's one of the things, another reason why I'm continuing forward. I graduated with my MPH in October of 2024. And so here I am on September 1st of 2025, starting my doctorate of public health program. I also kind of like mentioned, some of the things, additional things that to reflect on when like picking the institution. For me, I picked California Baptist University, not necessarily because it's affiliation with a religious denomination. I selected it primarily because one, it's accredited by the Council of Education on Public Health, which is very important to me. My MPH was as well. So the Doctorate of Public Health program is accredited, is CEF accredited. I also like the concentration. My MPH was a generalist focused, and I did want, when I did see the opportunity to have a concentration as it relates to health education promotion, that was something that I really wanted to pursue, because also that would allow me to eventually apply for the Certified Health Education Specialist certification once I'm done, and then ultimately based on experience and additional experience, ultimately would possibly be able to apply for the Master Certified Health Education Specialist role or certification. So, that's one of the reasons, like I say, or some of the reasons, the concentration, also the fact, that it's CEF certified. Also, it's online, so CBU's DrPH program is totally online, which, I've had the bulk of my education and experience has been online, which I really like, primarily because of the flexibility. I do work full time. I'm at epidemiologist slash field operations supervisor with the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. So, ultimately I needed a program where I would still be able to work full time, but also have the flexibility to complete my classes whenever I did or whenever I had the time to. So that's another option. And then the course or semester structure is another thing that drew me to CBU. Most of my bachelor's, my master's program, most those institutions that I did attend, they were based on the semester system, but the semester was broken up into 2 terms, and so ultimately a course would be 8 weeks long, and you could still take 2 courses in a semester, but you're only taking 1 course at a time because they're 8 weeks long. So you take 1 course during the first term, and then the second course during term 2. And for me, that ultimately worked. Obviously, have to be mindful. Of course, you're completing graduate level, doctorate level course in a compressed amount of time. But again, for me, it does fit what I'm used to. And then I also mentally, when I'm doing a countdown, so I can say this is week 1, next week is week 2, and it's just 8 weeks for me mentally. I vibe with it, and it seems to go by pretty quick, because the amount of work you have will keep you obviously occupied. And they say time flies when you're having fun, right? And then also, the admissions counselors and, my interactions with some of the folks at CBU were really pleasant. And so, I was deciding between Walden University and CBU. And I ultimately decided to go with CBU because of the things I mentioned. And also one thing that I also liked is that I didn't want to necessarily have to deal or go through the whole application process through so fast. So, CBU did not require that. And then also their tuition was, relatively inexpensive compared to some of the other institutions that, I had looked at, because I had also looked at Fairfield University, had started my application there, and then ultimately withdrew my application. I applied and got accepted to Massachusetts College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences for a doctorate of health sciences, because they don't have a DrPH. But again, also their tuition was more expensive. And then also, another thing that I liked about CBU is that, luckily they did offer me a scholarship, albeit, it was small, but, I always look at it as then, every little bit helps, especially as I'm nearing the end of my educational journey. And, I've relied on financial aid and so forth. So, every little bit counts. But yes, so I know that this is has been a little long-winded. We're a little over 8 minutes and 20 seconds, but I want to kind of document my journey towards achieving or completing my DrPH at California Baptist University. And I hope to share my experience going through. I think this is not only for those who are also looking for or considering pursuing a DrPH, but also I think for me personally, I think this also helps motivate me and keep me on track. So kind of provide that sense of accountability. But if you do have any questions about my experience at CBU, or even with my MPH, I did that through American Military University, which is part of American Public University System. I'm more than happy to answer. But yeah, I appreciate your time, and yeah, I will see you next week to give you an update on my first week as a DrPH student at California Baptist University. Peace.